Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the February 12th meeting of the Blackstone Millville Regional School District School Committee. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to introduce the school committee members. I'll start on my left.
Sarah Williams, Blackstone.
Karen Vernon, Millville.
Jack Keefe, Blackstone.
Sarah Larkin, Millville.
Jane Reggio, Millville.
Erin Binaco, Millville.
Tammy Lemieux, Blackstone.
Diane Robin, Blackstone.
Okay. And welcome to our candidate, Dr. Rich Droulet. I hope your day's gone well.
It's been a good day.
Okay, that's good. So we're going to give you an opportunity to start this evening. If you have any opening remarks, but please share for us maybe the highlights of your entry plan should you be selected as our next superintendent. So the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. It has been a great day. I've learned a lot about the district, and I've met some great people. And I want to thank everyone for being here that spent time with me today and taking time out of their day to, show me Blackstone Millville and to get to learn a little bit more about me. I'll just start by sharing that I've learned a lot today. I think there's some great teams in place, and I'd be happy to work as a part of that team as the lead learner and someone to move things forward. As I've talked about, I work in a neighboring district that's very similar to Blackstone Millville with very similar goals and challenges. So I feel that I could hit the ground running to use some of those experiences to try to get things done here. In terms of my entry plan, I've shared copies of it with you. Basically, within the first 6, no later than 9 months, I would have wanted to accomplish the 3 main parts of it, which is to listen and learn, to learn and lead, and then to lead and strategize. And some of the main highlights and parts of that in terms of the listening and learning, visiting classrooms, chairing and going to school events, creating a written biweekly school committee update so that opposite school committee meetings, I'd have a written update for you to make sure you're informed of everything that's going on. Of course, I'd participate in the new superintendent induction program, which I would want to be a part of. Conduct 150 to 200 interviews of everyone in the community, as many people as I can. Get to know the district more, some of the strengths and challenges. Keep the work going with the facilities and maintenance, making sure we're in queue with MSBA. Thing I'm most excited about, applying best practices to teaching and learning, to working with strong leadership teams, building shared decision making, engaging with the leadership team and other teacher leaders, and then strategizing no later than next winter, 5-year plans for things like facilities and maintenance, technology, and curriculum to make sure that we have clear plans. And I would be happy to be someone to, spend a 5-year commitment here to check progress of those goals, to make sure that the work is getting done, refine them as needed, and to try to have our plans turn into action that can ultimately benefit our students and want to keep them here and make them proud to be in our school district.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, Sarah.
I have the first question. How did you go about setting goals and objectives for your schools last year? Explain how you involved your school committee and others in setting these plans.
Well, looking at your goals, it just struck me how similar they were. I was in charge for writing our district goals in Uxbridge essentially last summer. Of course, working with the leadership team, but I really did write them. And they were very similar to yours in that we had goals for technology integration, just like you do, improving special education efficiencies, We didn't necessarily have the renovations one because we're closing a building, but improving social emotional well-being for students and making curriculum improvements to improve student achievement. These are goals that you have that actually I wrote and had in Uxbridge as well. So gaining everyone's feedback, researching other districts that have had similar goals that have already begun work and had successes, communicating those goals out to the school committee and to others, making sure that I'm transparent in the process, gaining people's feedback about how those goals might need to be tweaked. And then ultimately, I'm actually tomorrow leading a leadership team meeting where we're doing a mid-year. We're a little bit more through the mid-year, but we're doing a progress report, a check on our goals. And working with the leadership team, we're going to audit ourselves to see how we've done and where we are with the action steps with each of those goals, make adjustments to see what have we done, check that off, celebrate that as a success, but what haven't we done and what do we still need to do between now and the end of the school year to make sure those goals happen. So checking progress, meeting with people to make sure that they're informed, and also revising as needed, celebrating successes, and continuing to move forward to make sure that it's not just on paper, but we're actually living the words in the action plans.
So what do you expect to find tomorrow?
I think in certain areas we'll be on target. For example, social emotional well-being. I've started a social emotional task force in the community where we're auditing what we're doing in the schools to meet the social emotional needs of students at all levels, and starting to develop plans for professional development for teachers and for programming for our next school year. And also, I think special education inclusion and efficiencies we're in good shape, but I think other things like technology integration, we might still need to do some work there. So I think that each goal will be different, but we'll see, and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
I have the next question. You can take a drink, though. So the roles and responsibilities of school committees and superintendents are sometimes clear and sometimes ambiguous. For example, budget approval versus budget implementation, or personnel policy and finance versus personnel administration, or even dealing with parents and teachers' concerns or complaints. Can you describe some situations where these roles and responsibilities have challenged you and how you did work to address them?
I think without getting into confidentiality things with the personnel examples, there are some examples I've dealt with personnel and challenges there, but making sure that any policies and procedures we have are adhered to, and oftentimes reminding staff of what those policies and procedures are, especially in a timely manner and when things arise. Staff evaluation is a big one. I noticed in your appendices in the back of the Unit A contract, there's pretty clear guidelines, and ours are similar on administrators meeting the timelines and everything for educator evaluation. I think that budget is really always happening. It's year long. We're in budget season now, and I think that it's one thing to go through a budget and get it approved, but in terms of dealing with parents and concerns and complaints, I guess some situations I can deal with is I'm always willing to listen, and I always have an open door, and I'm always going to communicate with people early and often and get back to someone as soon as possible. So I'm going to listen. I'm going to be fair in any decision, but I think the best teachers are firm but fair. And so to be able to explain any decisions that are made that we're really making in the best interest of students, and that even if someone might not agree with a decision, to have respectful dialogue and interaction to make sure that people know that they're being listened and heard, and for me to then be able to communicate why decisions are made. in terms of, I'm thinking of the parents or teachers and concerns and complaints. I think that that is my leadership style, and trying to, just be fair, listen to everyone, make sure we're meeting all policies and procedures, and move forward with decisions that are in the best interest of students.
Thank you.
Tammy?
Can you give them time to read?
Yes. Oh, if you flip your page, you'll notice Tammy's question is
Okay.
lengthy, so we'll give you a minute.
It's a
She'll read
case
it
study.
also, but if
Okay.
you want to read through it, because we wouldn't expect anybody to remember all of that when she's reading it. Well, other than Tammy herself.
I wouldn't remember this.
Okay.
Ready?
Sure.
So this is a special education scenario. Elizabeth is a 5th grade student who has been diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder and a learning disability in the areas of reading and writing. Due to her history of difficult behavior in the general education setting, the team determined that Liz's needs could not be met in her home school in 4th grade, so her educational placement was changed to an out-of-district school. As Liz is expected to enter 6th grade, the IEP team meets to re-examine placement for middle school. The out-of-district placement provides data that Liz has developed strategies to handle her behavior more appropriately during the school day. Since the middle school in the district has a set of services as provided within a specialized program that can meet Liz's needs, the Legal Education Agency recommends returning Liz to the least restrictive environment within her home school. The parent disagrees with this recommendation because Liz has met new friends at her school. What would your advice be when the special education director comes to you for guidance?
All right, so there's a lot there, and I would want to learn the history of the student being placed into out-of-district placement and what led to that decisions, because we do want to keep kids here in their home district as much as possible. But with that being said, I think that moving forward, I would ask a lot of questions to gain understanding of the special education director. In terms of the middle school placement, it does seem like in this situation it would be best for the student to come back to the home district. And if the only thing keeping them from coming back is the new friends that they've met at the new school, asking the special education director about, steps she's taken, meeting with the parent to assure the parent that there's going to be things in place for when the student returns, that they're going to feel comfortable and they're going to be assured that they have friends here, and they're going to be placed, with a team of teachers that is supportive of their reentry and all of many different types of supports. I would personally want to, probably talk to the parent as well a little bit more to see how much they're in disagreement with the placement to return, and to see if there's anything that I or we can do as a team to make him or her more comfortable. But also making sure that the special education director is following all procedures and protocols. I think that having meetings audio taped, making sure that there's a note taker there to ensure that the team decision for the student to return to the district has been documented and supported, but at the same time wanting to provide supports for the mom or the dad and for the student as they return, so that when they return they feel supported and they know that they will have friends here, be in an inclusive setting, and people that are looking out for the best interest of the kid.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Quite a lot.
Karen?
My question is also a bit lengthy, so if you need to read it, I'm going to read it aloud, but if you need some extra time. The citizens in both Blackstone and Millville demand value for their tax dollars and transparency in fiscal accountability. In this light, tell us about how you would ensure that the budget you propose and the financial plan that you oversee, as approved by the school committee, is as transparent and efficient as possible. And can you tell us how you would develop the district budget proposal and what your history has been working with municipal officials like town managers, board of selectmen, or finance committees?
So I definitely would want to make the budget process transparent so that everyone knows the timelines and what's happening. So, for example, I would work very closely, and I've been told by a number of people that there's a great business manager here with the financial aspect. Besides working with the business manager for starting to build the annual school budget, essentially in October and November, I would work with school principals and having them get feedback from their school councils with parents involved on developing their school budget. By late November, early December, I would have timelines and make sure that they've submitted their school budgets to myself and the business manager and the leadership team. We would then put together a district budget. Then once the district budget is put together, that's essentially preparing the regional school budget. Making sure that there's school committee, sharing that with the school committee, making sure there's school committee public hearing related to the budget, advocating for what we need moving forward without having crazy requests, but by then hopefully I would have plans which support any additions in the budget, whether it's technology or any staffing and positions, so it can see how it's part of our plans moving forward. Hopefully first time, but more likely not, the school committee would not adopt the budget. We would have another hearing, or we would need to go back, make revisions or reductions, eventually come to a point where the school committee adopts the budget. Then I know you do calculate the per pupil town appropriations to the town meetings, and so on. In terms of that, I would have already communicated with Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen from both towns to make sure that they're aware of the transparent process, any new items or any increases in budget, so that they understand what that is and how it can support our students and support both towns. If it's unsuccessful, that's okay. I have thick skin. We're going to go back. We're going to rework things and, present again for another town vote. I think that communication is the key. So having dialogue about our district goals, how it's important to have a school system that is supported by community members, but being able to share how the good work we are doing is going to benefit both communities. And so that's where my communication with Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, town managers, I was able to meet both town managers today, and I learned a lot. I would definitely be communicating with them moving forward so that there's no surprises, and so that hopefully there would be a higher chance of the leaders in each town supporting our schools because they're seeing the value in where the tax dollars are going.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Can you give examples of quality programs and/or educational policies to improve quality of instruction that you have implemented in another school district? Can you give us examples of programs that were not successful and describe the course of action you took as a result?
Sure. I think there was one of the slides I had shared today that talks about this, but I'll give a few examples. Implementing PBIS, positive behavioral interventions and supports, at the past 2 school districts I've worked in, to have school-wide practices and procedures that were developed by teacher teams and myself that give students clear expectations for what we expect of them in terms of their behavior and trying to support them with that. Most things we need professional development. The thing I'm probably most proud of is last year realizing that our based on our grades 3 to 5 MCAS literacy ELA scores being lower than they should be in Uxbridge, working with a team of teachers and principals and team chairs and developing a literacy action plan, K to 5, 3 years, and we're in year 1 now. Using Title I grant monies to pay for much needed professional development that teachers hadn't had in 10 to 20 years. For guided reading, Readers and Writers Workshop is coming up, and benchmark assessment systems so that teachers are more supported, building book rooms with leveled readers that teachers can use, using changing the role of, even though we've cut reading specialists because of budget, I worked with the union to change the job descriptions so our reading specialists are coaching teachers more, not just pulling out students to work with them, and coaching teachers to help make sure that the practices are happening in the classroom. Also contracting with vendors like the Teaching and Learning Alliance, again paid for through Title I grant monies, to support the coaches in coaching the teachers, and having them take coursework through Lesley University effective literacy coach training for the coaches. So that's one more detailed, and we've checked the progress on that, and midway through this year. Also, in terms of examples that were not successful in course of action taken, I think that maybe necessarily not that it wasn't successful, but starting the implementation of middle school inquiry-based science kits, and realizing that tweaks needed to be made from teacher feedback. They didn't have enough time to delve into 3 kits in 1 year, so changing it so they're doing 2 kits in 1 year, providing more some professional development and training for them. So that's realizing that sometimes you need to change things based on feedback from others to have things be more realistically implemented, rather than trying to do everything at once. So there's some feedback there. Thanks.
Ready for me? Please tell us about a time when you mobilized or attempted to mobilize the agencies and personnel in other parts of the municipal and/or state social services network to support children and families. How would you go about getting those who do not report to you in making the school successful?
Okay, that one's tough. When I hear state social services, I'm thinking of...
I'm thinking more municipal and other outside agencies that might support
okay.
maybe social emotional issues and things like that.
Okay, sure. Because originally I was thinking calling, DCF when students are neglected. I'm in charge of homeschooling, so sometimes if families aren't following through with their curriculum plans, making sure and communicating with people to make sure that happens. But
I think dealing with people outside our school district.
Okay.
To work to get programs and things working.
Sure. That's something that I do a lot. I think it's very important to have a wide network, because when I don't know something, I need a knowledge base to reach out to. And I'll learn a lot from people in the district, but sometimes I need to reach out to others outside of the district who might have already gone through something or might have experience or resources that we might not have here. So in terms of examples with that, I guess I'll go back briefly just to that literacy plan where we researched. I went to 3 or 4 different school districts, Groton, Dunstable, the Cape, and Medway, where we found out other districts that had started using leveled readers and guided reading and benchmark assessment systems and have book rooms for their teachers to get resources for the teachers, visiting those places, finding out how to support it at the school and at the district level, also what types of resources to order, not just buying everything that the vendor is telling us to order, but what works best for other districts that have already gone through those things. So, you know, in terms of things like social emotional learning, through BICO, I'm exploring now to have a leadership team get training in how to implement a strategic plan and to make sure that best practices are happening either in an individual school or in a whole district around social emotional learning, and that's through local college and universities and local collaboratives as well. So I've through some of the grant work with Project Lead the Way to get more engineering and design courses at our middle and high school. I've worked with Mass STEM Hub, which is out of Worcester Polytech, WPI, and they've been instrumental in helping pair us with other districts that have already gone through some of these course modules for students and training for teachers. So I guess that would be another example that comes to mind with partnering with other agencies to, oftentimes when you get grants, there's other agencies involved, not just for checks and balances, but to help you have a scope of work and to make sure that the money that they're giving you is utilized properly. So.
All right, want me to grab my second
Yes,
one?
sure.
Do we have time?
Yep.
There are times when simple intelligence is not enough to resolve a problem. Can you describe a complex problem, situation, or crisis that you confronted where you had to rely more than intelligence, but when you had to call upon your other skills and abilities for, say, communicating, thinking quickly, working with people, political savvy, instinct, academic training, and intellect?
I think there's been some times dealing with difficult personnel issues where I've definitely, had to call upon others for advice and for things like that. Like as I mentioned before, I'm always reaching out to others. To the knowledge base. Just a quick situation, I guess. One time. When the superintendent wasn't available, I'm acting superintendent, so I was called to a bus accident scene, and there was an elementary school bus that was in an accident actually right near the Millville line here. Thankfully, no one was really hurt, but one girl did need to be transported to the hospital, and there were some parents who were arriving who wanted to take their kids home, and others arrived at the scene and didn't want to allow the kids to go home. They wanted the bus to continue on the route, but I had to make a decision, after talking to the police chief that, it's okay to let the kids home to their parents right there. That's the best thing to do. And then, so that's just a situation. But I think that I try not to make rash, quick decisions, and I try to reach out to others to help when there's complex issues, because many issues that come up in a school system are not just going to be me making decisions on my own. I'm going to have a team. Oftentimes during leadership team meetings with principals and other directors, I like to go through simulations, and I have protocols to do that where we have problem-solving situations where we have case studies and we talk about what we would do in those situations as well, and that helps when you actually have situations that you have to address.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm sure you're aware of our district's ongoing struggle with the high volume of students, especially in the high school, who choose to go out of district for their high school learning. So I'm just wondering what you would recommend do, or what steps you would take in order to try and turn that trend around.
Mm-hmm. As I've mentioned before, we're in the same exact situation in Uxbridge. We take in maybe $300,000 of money in for school choice, but it's millions that we spend out from students that go elsewhere. Kind of working with the superintendent and the high school principal, although I have tried to address ways to make things more equitable to get into, schools like BVT, but also so that we're not really competing per se. Let's focus on what we have and take what we have and do the best that we can. So working with the high school principal and the superintendent, we've taken the mindset that we're going to try to make our high school, our flagship, and add programming to our high school, start with what we have with the limited resources we have, but we can make improvements through grants and through partnerships. And, eventually, hopefully more kids stay, the less kids want to go. There's certain things that we can't change if students have a lot of choice, but also improving what we have and communicating to others improvements that we're making along the way, and increasing the likelihood that a student will want to stay because we have offerings that can compete with other schools and that can help them in their future planning with things through helping them with internships or developing pathways that we can provide for students to pursue a certain field that they're interested in, and that's going to take reaching out to middle schoolers and not just 8th grade per se, but really doing the best that we can, and it's going to take time. That's not a trend that I'm going to say is going to reverse in 1 or even 5 or 10 years, but hopefully in the future, improving our school district, focusing on teaching and learning, my educational leadership and partnering with others, it would change the trend so that we are not losing more money than we are taking in. So ideally, we would be, more of a district of choice, but at the same time, I understand students have choice. We're not going to fault them for that, but we're going to try to improve our offerings to meet their needs.
Great. Anybody have any follow-ups? Okay. So we know you did your research, you planned, you created some documents for us, some entry plans. You've spent a good amount of your time, almost 12 hours of your day with us. So reflect for a minute. And if you were offered this position as superintendent of the Blackstone Millville Regional School District, what would you be most excited about? What did you see as our strengths, and how would you celebrate those? And I imagine, hard to believe, but you probably saw some areas of concern or some challenges. And is there anything in particular that you're already thinking, boy, I have the skills to help them get through some of these things? So to make my long question short, what are you saying to yourself right now about this district, and kind of reflect on your day?
It's been a good day, and I think that, the thing that I'm probably most excited about is I like communicating with people. I was excited to meet some good people, good leadership team, good principals, good teachers. Students seem great, and I have talked to others who have shared similar things about strengths of the district. I think that there's a number of people that I think are excited about and prepared to support the schools, but maybe don't know how, or maybe question finances and budget and spending. So I think that I'd be most excited to learn more, to get to know people, to learn more about the strengths and the challenges of the district. I saw strengths: teachers, principals, people invested in the schools. The school committee seems pretty cohesive, and wanting to provide the best opportunities for the students here. And I think that in terms of anything particular, I do definitely. I feel like I could get started in the spring, but I wouldn't. I definitely think that developing plans is something that is important, but that is going to take time, and it's going to need to be with people's feedback and learning about what common visions and goals there are within those specific things like curriculum technology and facilities and maintenance. But I think that I would be excited to get started, and as I've mentioned before, living nearby and working in a very similar community with similar challenges, I do feel like I would be able to hit the ground running because the learning curve of the district might not be as steep as some others.
Okay. Well, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
No, that's it. I just want to thank everyone again for the, being very welcoming to me and providing me with a day that, although it's a blur, it was a good experience. It was a good experience,
No?
and it was exciting to meet a lot of good people here.
It's exciting to meet you as well. It was a pleasure to meet you as well. Yes, Aaron has one more question.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So it's not, it's probably, I should have asked it as a follow-up to Jack's question about the school choice. And through the day, you've shared with us the changes that Uxbridge is entering this summer, that they're closing a building and bringing one additional grade into the 3 remaining buildings. I'd just like to hear from you what part you played in bringing that forward to the community, to the town, and what you actually went through as a school to get to that point. So how many years ago did you start that process? And what were you actively part of that happening? Sorry.
Well, I was the middle school principal, which is the building that is closing, which is
3 years ago?
I was there for 3 years, from 2013 to 16. And I know the dire condition of the building. And when I immediately got there, I realized that the building had been neglected for so many years as they were struggling to build the new high school, which, I think took about 10 years to approve in town, and then, a few years to build. I don't think the middle school kids probably should have ever transitioned there. They should have closed the building when they built the new high school, but that's besides the point, and that's before I was there. So I think that I was in support of the superintendent and the middle school principal and the leadership team advocating to close the building. The reason being, we knew that we had enough room in the other buildings. Our enrollment, like you, I believe, had gone down. And it's also realizing that it was an opportunity to consolidate resources, where the school committee just approved a 2% increase for next year. So for the first year in a number of years, we're not having to cut staff. We had a failed override last spring. But besides that, there are some benefits to it where we can consolidate resources, where without having to cut staff, there's certain positions in special education, for example, being able to offer programmings for students with autism, severe and profound needs, and social emotional learning needs that we'll be able to meet by kind of consolidating the schools. There's definitely challenges, and this summer will be very difficult with moves, and we just recently informed teachers that are changing placements of their changes, but I think people have been receptive of it and have known for years that that building does need to close. But I think that there are opportunities. For example, although it's going to be a challenge having an 8 through 12 high school, opportunities for some 8th graders, not just with sports at the high school, but with being able to take high school courses, and hopefully having more students stay in district and then choosing to leave. So those are some possible positives, and some potential there. And thankfully, the community, in communicating with the community originally, although it came together fairly quickly in the fall, to some school committee members, I think, surprise, it did gain the support. The superintendent led a building study task force, and they came out with the two different scenarios, and the school committee opting for the scenario where each school absorbs a grade, essentially. Changing our middle school to an intermediate school will be a challenge, but having plans in place already with the buildings, where classrooms are going, and opportunities for students, and the principals starting to schedule already for next year. So there's plans in place, and I think there's opportunities and potential there, although there are challenges.
When was that building study task force formed?
I believe, I wasn't a part of the task force. I believe the task force was formed previously, a year or two in the past, and then it dissolved, or it didn't pursue closing the school, but then it started to meet again this summer and fall, and this fall.
So that quickly, from fall?
Right, but they had the group had previously met in years past, and then the work was kind of put on hold and then resumed again.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much for spending the day with us. And, we will say our thanks. And
Thank you very much as well.
Yep.